Hello and welcome to Each Budget Brews. I'm Tim, and tonight we're continuing in our $100 deck text. We're going to do Koll, the Forge Master. But before we get started, please check out our Discord and our Patreon. Links are in the description below. And if you like our content, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. And guess who's back? Mr. Booty himself, Brandon. How you doing?
Yes, sir. I'm all right. How are you doing, Tim?
Doing good, man. How was your nap? Because we're a little late.
It's great. It was great, actually. I felt wonderful.
Good. I had some Baja Blast, so, kind of get me up a little bit. Without further ado, let's talk about Koll. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So Koll, for those of you who don't know, is a 2/2 for 1 red, 1 white dwarf warrior. That will be pertinent here in a minute. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, you return it to its owner's hand. That's the important line of text. As well as creature tokens you control that are enchanted or equipped get +1/+1. So, do you have any idea why you would play Koll at all?
I'm not super familiar with Koll. No, I can't say I am.
Okay, so Koll does two things. So if you play cards like Kobold of Kirkheap and Rograk,
Mm-hmm.
and you equip it onto a certain piece of equipment that we all like, called Skull Clamp, the creature will die. You will draw 2 cards and it'll come back to your hand. So for 1 mana, if you have Koll in play, you can play a Kobold and draw 2 cards. All right. Sounds awesome, right? But that costs 1 mana. So the way you get around that is you play cost reducers like Pure Steel Paladin, and you play Auroch Steel Shaper, or you play Burgi. There's a couple other ones here, but with the 0-drop creatures like Memnite, Crimson Kobold, Kirkheap, the Crookshank Kobold, and Rograk, you just need a single cost reducer for all those. The deck has a lot of them. In fact, let me just go over all the cost reducers real quick while we're at it. So we're packing for this $100 deck. We're packing Nahiri because A, she's creature removal if we need it, and B, she's a cost reducer for our combos because now she makes the equip cost 0. We have Burgi, which is a cost reducer in the fact that every time we play our 0-drop creature, it makes a red, so then that gives us a free equip. Then we have Pure Steel Paladin, which just outright makes the equip 0. Then there's also, down here at the bottom, we have Fighter Class, which also gives us, if we get it to the level 2, so this is 5 mana, but what's nice about the Fighter Class is that it's self-assembling. When you play it, it goes get your Skull Clamp. Then you uptick it to level 2, and now it makes your equip cost 0 for the Skull Clamp. And then, last but not least, we have the Auroch Steel Shaper, which will also make the equip cost 0. So, now you're probably asking yourself, okay, so now that we have Koll, now that we have our cost reducer, and we have a 0-drop, and we have our Skull Clamp, how do we win? Right?
Yeah.
So the way you win is with one of 2 equipments. Mask of Emulation, which just gives equipped creature the ability to sacrifice, deal 1 damage to anything. And Mortarpod, which gives equipped creature sacrifice, deal 1 damage to any target. It's templated originally to say creature or player, but it's actually any target once it's been reworded. So there's a couple of like slightly more advanced lines that are kind of layered in, which we can talk about in a minute. But the main thing is that you get Koll in play, you have a 0-drop, a cost reducer, and then your Skull Clamp. And then that will allow you to draw your deck and then further deploy more cost reducers to be able to get the Mask Emulation. Since you're in Boros, you have decent removal, and you have access to rituals, and you also have access to treasure producers. So Obviously, we have all the artifact ramp that we can play. One of the spicy ones is Paradise Mantle. So with the Paradise Mantle, Fervent Champion will allow us to play it, tap it, equip it for free because it reduces the equip cost of things that equip to it by 3. So we can play it, tap it on the turn it comes, like as we play it, and then tap it for a red so that way it'll pay for itself on the next one, and then equip the Skull Clamp for 0. It'll kill it, return it to our hand. So basically, the Fervent Champion acts as a cost reducer on multiple levels, because as long as we have the Paradise Mantle in play, it'll keep making its own mana and then draw us deeper into our deck. And then also once we get the Mask of Emulation in play, as long as we have something like enough red mana, like say like we have Bergie in play, or again with the Paradise Mantle, it will allow us to just kind of kill everybody. So there's lots of like same thing with like Impulsive Pilferer. It's got a cost reduction mechanism built in with when it dies, it makes a treasure. The same thing with the Moon Vessel, with the Mirror Moon Vessel. When it dies, it makes it colorless. So all of these combo creatures are either free on their own or have a cost, like basically like a cost reduction mechanic that makes them free. One of the spicier ones is Chiron Legate. It's only free if an opponent controls a planes, but in a 4-player game, like unless your meta very specifically doesn't have white in it, that's probably going to be online by turn 4, which is about where this deck kind of clocks. And then to find your cost, like your 0-drop creatures or your cost reduced creatures, you have a couple of ways to kind of find them other than drawing them, because there's like 8 of them. So your chances are, like if you get any kind of dig going, like you're going to find them. You've got Ranger of Eos, which will find 2 of them. You've also got the Imperial Recruiter, which will find them, as well as you can also, if you generate enough treasures, you can use Magda to find Memnite or Moon Vessel Mirror if you need to. Like, obviously that's clunky and not the best, but it's something. Also, we're running Goblin Matron, which will find us the Impulsive Pilferer or the Chiron Legate. So we have like 3 dedicated tutors to finding the one of our 8 combo creatures to go with Koll. And then also the Imperial Recruiter can double as getting the Aurochs Steel Champion and can also get the Fervent Champion. Then we have a couple of ways to find the equipment we need. We have, obviously, we're playing Relic Seeker, which is probably one of the better ones in the deck, just because we're $100, so we're kind of gated by what we can play. There is also, obviously, Magda again, which will find us any artifact or dragon, but we're not running dragons because dragons. We're also running Open the Armory, which is kind of another way to find it. And then lastly, we're also running, and then we're running these 2, which is Quest for the Holy Relic, Fighter Class. We're at like 26 creatures plus Koll. So we can, like, this won't set it off super early, but it will set it off like by mid to late game. So it's like a good, like, kind of think of it as more like a mid-range piece. And then we also have Fighter Class. And then down in the lands, we've got Axe Guard Armory, which will, it's not costed very well, but it makes white mana. And then when we need to go find our combo piece, we can just go and pay for it and get it. And we can do it at instant speed, so we can just do it like on our last opponent's end step on tap and go. And then we have a little bit of recovery built in with Buried Ruin as a land. We have redundant pieces of the hard outlet with the mask and the mortar pod. Then we also have Trash for Treasure. And then we also have Goblin Engineer. And Goblin Engineer will buy back any of the 3 or 4 main pieces: the Paradise Mantle, the Skull Clamp, Skull Clamp's the big one, and then one of the two, the Mortar Pot or the Mask Emulation. Then we have a little bit of like removal, obviously. We got Bolt, we got Swords, we got Dispatch, because we're on like 26 artifacts. We've got Mog Salvage, Pyrokinesis, we've got Unexpectedly Absent, we've got Cathartic Pyre. Those are all to kind of help clear problems out of the way. Dispatch, Ricochet Trap helps us kind of interact on the stack a little. Silence, as well as Flame Scroll Celibate that we can transform into Revel in Silence. It's the least efficient of the two silences, but the fact that it's on a creature that we can actually use as a hate bear isn't the worst. We can also actually equip the Skull Clamp to it if we had to, just to like draw a card or, draw a couple cards. So that is something kind of note. We're running some treasure production to kind of help bolster Magda a little bit. We are running Strike It Rich. We're running Unexpected Windfall, which is treasure production and card draw, as well as Big Score. And then we're running a couple of dwarves. So if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said that Koll was a dwarf. So Koll, if we tap it with like the Paradise Mantle, we're also running like Holdout Settle. We're running a couple of rainbow lands that you tap a creature and the land to make a mana of any color. Because we're not really attacking with these creatures, like unless we have to. Like there's a couple of like equipment that we have in there to give us some card draw, but for the most part, they're not really punching people in the face. Like we're pretty much a dedicated combo deck. So like Koll will combo with Magda to make treasures and then allow us to go search. We've also got, just for some like, kind of like our version of Rex Sage, is Plundering Barbarian. So it will destroy an artifact or it will make a treasure. So it kind of acts as a little bit of a cost reducer. And then if we have like a Springleaf Drum or something like that in play, then it'll make 2 treasures, which will kind of go a long way. And then lastly, and this is also another piece of a way to like kind of recuperate if we get stopped, is Restoration Specialist. Restoration Specialist will allow us to return an enchantment and up to one target artifact and up to 1 enchantment from our graveyard to our hand. It's also a dwarf. It will also draw cards off of Skull Clamp as well. And so kind of hits all those metrics. Magda's not like the best tutor in the deck, but it's a reasonable tutor that works with our commander, as well as like a couple of other creatures that we would probably be playing anyway. It just kind of gives good layering. To be honest, the best cost reducer we have in the deck, despite it not being the cheapest, is actually Fighter Class. If you can jam a Fighter Class and then tick it up, like you're in pretty good shape. So additionally, for some grind, we've got Zephyr Boots, Mask of Memory. We also have Crowbar, Citizen's Crowbar for a little bit of additional interaction. You might notice that we're running Soul Talisman and Lotus Bloom. Both of those, if we get them on turn 1, will be cast on turn 4, which is usually the main combo, like the main turn we're going to be trying to present a win. But also we can Goblin Engineer them and recur them is another thing we can do. So they kind of fill both of those roles. They're not great if we draw them off the top. At that point, I would probably pitch them to like some of the rummage cards that we have where it's discard a card, draw, and then use like trash for treasure or the engineer to kind of buy them back and then get max value off of them. A couple of cards worth considering that I'm not playing in the list currently, just to kind of touch base about, is like Runaway Steamkin is another like cost reducer where whenever you cast a red spell, it puts a counter on it. Then you remove 3 to make 3 mana. And then the Runaway Steamkin can't gain additional counters beyond 3. So essentially, every time you cast your Cobalt, every 3 times, you remove 3, you make 3. I've had it in the list. I found at the current iteration it's not necessary, but you might. If you want additional kind of like interaction and your games are going a little bit longer, Durgar Hedge Mage is good. It destroys an artifact if you control 2 mountains. It destroys an enchantment if you control 2 planes. It's also a dwarf, so it will help with Magda. You can play Draneth, even though it's really spendy. That's why I cut it, because even though I have the budget, it's like $8-9. If you wind up building, there's a version that's a little bit higher on instants of sorceries. You could also play Stormkiln Artist. So, there's that. Then there's some interaction pieces down here, kind of. If you wind up being in a slightly heavier stack meta, you could put in Red Blast, Pyroblast, Tumult Trickery to go with that Ricochet Trap. There's a couple other of those effects. I'm not super high on. I find that there's really not enough blue at $100 budget. That's like there are blue decks. There's just not so much blue that I need to be packing these cards, especially since I really only need I'm better off just trying to find more silence effects that work. So I would probably put in Mandate of Peace before I put those in, because Mandate of Peace, silence, the creature silence will do more to protect my turn than those will. I also equally get yeeted by if somebody's playing it and in 100, I operate these decks on the assumption that they're going to be playing against other decks of equal value. So most people aren't going to be running Besage or Orawara, because it's a single color land that costs $10 to $30 depending on the week. You could also add Rogue's Glove if you find that you're needing to get Metalcraft on a little bit more. There's Rustvale Bridge, Ancient Den, Great Furnace that you can kind of slot in and out. So I do kind of have a little bit of a little bit of a tech package. Also of note, if you find that you're not playing against enough planes, I would take that Legato. Because if there's no planes in play, it's not free. So there's, I think I'm playing all the other 0 drops. I would probably put the Runaway Steamkin in that slot. So, any questions?
No, I think you went over it pretty well, and it makes a lot of sense to me now.
The big thing with this deck is you're not going to be the fastest combo deck. Mm-hmm. So do keep that in mind. It is a little bit clunkier, but I think that it's innocuous enough and kind of can play under stuff. And by under stuff, I don't mean can play under rule of law necessarily. You'll want to remove it. That's another thing. If you find you're running against a bunch of rule of law effects and other stacks like that, you'll probably want to slot in Wear and Tear, Disenchant, stuff like that to be able to answer those. Mine's teched more for hate bears personally, but that's what I see more often when I play Arcane Laboratory or Rule of Law. So, all right. I think I've just about covered it all. The deck as is coming in at $89. I actually wrote an article series where I took the Arm for Battle Precon and then I upgraded it $15 a week for 10 weeks. It was $150. I will link that series and I kind of go over my my choices. This is basically the version of that deck if I just had bought it all at once instead of doing it incrementally. But a lot of the decisions, a lot of that kind of gets covered in that article series. So I will link that in the description, as well as this deck list. I also have a couple of higher budget Kolls. I have a 500, and then there's a couple of budget list ones that I will kind of post. I don't know. The deck's got a lot of really good interaction. It obviously it's not going to be the fastest. It is pretty quick though, and you could do a lot. If you put another $50 in this thing, it will be fast. A lot faster than other decks with $50 added to it. So again, thanks for joining me, and I think we're going to head out for the night. All right. Have a good night. See you later.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.